What's going on YouTube? It's Pelfrey, and let's take another look at the RedSea Reefer 250. If you watched last week's video, I talked about a scratch that's on the glass, and it's still there. There aren't any more scratches that I've seen, but that scratch is still there. Aside from that, I want to talk real quick about the response that I got to last week's video on the lighting, and I can't thank you guys enough, not only on YouTube, but on Reef to Reef as well. And you know, the overwhelming response was go Radion, and a couple people chimed in and said, you know, there's no reason why you can't grow any corals with what you have. Then I got to browsing Reef to Reef and kind of discussing it, and a couple people pointed me to a thread where a Reef to Reef member has a tank that's a little bit taller than my tank, and he's running the Aquatic Life T5 fixture. I think he's running all 4 Blue Plus bulbs and 3 160s, and his par numbers were ridiculous. So I know I'm pretty wishy-washy with things, and if you follow me for a long time, you probably are aware of this. So for the time being, I'm going to leave it alone, and I may change up the bulbs because I am running a Blue Plus, Coral Plus, a Actinic, and a Blue Plus. And to be honest with you, I believe I've been running the Blue Plus bulbs for, if it's not been a year yet, it's close to a year. So I actually have 2 brand new Blue Plus bulbs in, and I'm going to replace the Coral Plus maybe. I may try 2 Actinics, or I did some reading and some folks seem to like a Purple Plus. So I may try the Blue Plus Actinic, and then Actinic Blue Plus, and to see what how that works out for me. Now, as far as the Kessils, I've turned the color down to about 47-48%, and the intensity has increased now. I believe it's at like 70% or something like that. So I haven't checked par numbers, but the 2 of the 3 frags that I've put in the tank are doing quite well. Did turn off the doser, so I'm no longer dosing. I have no reason to dose, and you know, I'm just gonna leave it alone. I will maybe add another 3 or 160 to the tank, just because that gives me the ability to have more light coverage, I guess, so to speak. So aside from that, I just want to thank everybody again, because the response was absolutely overwhelming. So I did take, can't remember the comment, did take their advice, and I moved the torch down here, and you can see it's still getting beat up a little bit, but not as much. The problem with it being here in the middle of the tank was the fact that as the gyres collided and went down, the middle of the tank gets beat up pretty good. And with this being a 3-foot tank, I may be running the gyres a little bit too much. So I want to show you 2 of the 3 frags that I got 2 weeks ago, and tell me what you think, because the polyps are still out and extended. But I want to get some opinions on whether or not you think that I have too much flow. Should I change my flow? And if you're running gyre pumps, how are you running them? I think that they max out at 60%, which again, 60% on this tank is pretty good, but it's been running like that for quite some time now, and everything seems to be happy. So I don't believe that it's a flow issue, but hey, I'm open to listen to it. So let me take you off the tripod. Let's take a closer look. So the first piece here is on the left rock structure, and you can see the polyps are out on it. And for the most part, it actually looks like it's doing all right. There is a little bit of white on the frag itself, but it looks pretty happy to me. I don't feel like it's getting beat up in that particular position, but I'm definitely not a SPS or Acro pro, so let me know your opinions on that one. This frag here, which is kind of hard to see, it's not done so well lately. I don't know if that's polyps trying to come out on it or what the deal on it is. It just hasn't really responded too well. And then we'll move up to this guy right here, and as you can see, the polyps are out well on this Acro. I don't know the names, I'll be upfront and honest with you. So, but it looks pretty well happy in that spot. And again, it's in a pretty good flow area. So if we move down real quick, take a look at this torch. You can see there's a head that's missing off of it. And of course these Recordias have done quite well for some time now. I'm concerned about this little hammer here because it's starting to die a little bit, but now there's the old Monty cap. Let's see if I can get you a side view of this guy right here. And for the most part, like I said, he looks pretty good and pretty happy to me. We'll take a closer look at this Recordia. These things have done phenomenal over the last couple of weeks for some strange reason. So I'm really hoping that these corals do well, and I can get some more, which this is that prized Aqua SD coral that I got many months back, and you can see it's not doing anything. It's almost all white at this point, so not much I can do about that. But for the most part, pretty happy. I'm going to do a water change and change out the RedSea Reefer valve. So if you're not aware, the RedSea Reefer tanks come with a return line, an emergency drain, and then a primary drain. And that primary drain has a valve on it so that you can tune it and make the system quiet. For the last 18 months, I believe, I can't remember how old the tank is, I've used the RedSea valve with no issues whatsoever. Up until recently, I've had to adjust that valve a little more often than I'd like. I'd like to just kind of set it and forget it. So basically, you know, it takes some fine tuning. So if you turn it a lot, you're going to get a big adjustment. So it's like hair turns that need to be done on it. So in order to change out that valve, this is a 1 inch to 3/4 inch. What is this, like I don't know the exact name of it, but it's a slip to threaded fitting, and I could have gone 3/4 inch, except for I already had 1 inch pipe, so that's the direction that I chose. Like I said, I already had the blue 1 inch PVC, and then this is a 1 inch Spears gate valve. So from what I've read, the folks that have changed out their RedSea valve for this valve right here have had no issues with it and never have to tune it again. So apparently this works quite a bit better. I'm going to find out. Most of the time I use primer, but in this particular instance I did not have any primer, and that's up for debate. But I just prefer to use primer, but I always use clear cement and primer so that it doesn't leave any residue. You can see some of the glue marking there, but you know, if you used the typical purple PVC cement, you would see purple around these seams here, whereas they're clear. And again, that's going to be just fine. Of course, you're going to need some Teflon tape for the threaded fitting here, and then you're going to have to order this piece right here from RedSea, and basically it's a barb fitting. So this is the piece that you would put on the return section, but this is a barb fitting, and you're going to have to take it apart. So it should unscrew if I can grip it. So clearly I wasn't strong enough to grip this, but I'm going to use some pliers here. See if I can get this valve off. I really don't feel like it should be this difficult to do. There we go. And as you can see here, straight from the manufacturer, they've used tape and they've used an O-ring. So luckily for me, I bought this kit a while back, and it has an assortment of O-rings in it. I don't want to bore you all with all the specifics, so I got my O-ring here. And before we get it much further into it, check out SithRico, SithRico. He did a full detailed video specifically on doing this modification. So next up is the Teflon tape. The end result here is the RedSea Reefer fitting on the NPT fitting. So you can see there is the O-ring, And now all I gotta do is pop the original drain pipe off, snap this one in. I may have to cut it. It may be a little long. As a reference point, this is the RedSea drain compared to the new drain. So as you can see, I'm gonna have to cut some length off there, which is not a big deal at all. Whenever I get this on the tank, we're gonna take this one apart and we're gonna take a look inside of it. But you can see it's got some various things on here. Of course, it's been in the sump for a very long time. So I'm gonna hang on to it, definitely, just in case there's some type of issue with this. It's never a bad idea to have a backup. But you can see the ends here look the same, minus the fact that this has a kind of a reddish orange O-ring and this one has a black O-ring on it, but this should be a plug and play application. So I've never taken one of these valves apart, but it looks like it's a fairly simple process. These pieces, these little rubber pieces pop out. And on the inside here, you can see that you're gonna need some type of Allen wrench to open it up. I'm pretty sure it's just a diaphragm inside of here, but let's take a look, see what we got inside of this. Which they weren't very tight, but sometimes things don't need to be extremely tight in order for them to work. So the key here for me will be to remember how it's put back together. Trying to hurry, folks, I'm sorry. Looks like we got a couple more turns. Right off the bat, what do I see? Bubble algae. Bubble algae right there. But all in all, this thing isn't nearly as dirty as I thought. And they actually make it this way so that you can take it apart and clean it. So before I touch that, I'm gonna get some rubber gloves and I'll just run it in the sink and get this thing cleaned up and use it as a spare. We got the RedSea valve cleaned. So all I did was take this over to the sink, take this brush, clean it out. Same thing with this. So imagine the way that this works is this valve here pushes this diaphragm in and out. So water comes down here. This will dictate how much water, and then it goes down this outlet and into the sump. So I did take the time to semi-clean this. I don't care too much about it. It's going to dry up, but I got most of the stuff off of it. For the most part, you're probably not going to be able to see down the tube, but it wasn't as dirty as I thought it would be. Now, with this being my first rimless tank, I have to say that I love the rimless tanks, but you can see where the water line is. Well, you can vaguely see it. There we go. This smudge mark right here. So what I try to do is just clean it off as I'm doing the water change. You know, with rim tanks, you'll never see any of that. So I just try to clean it off as I do water changes or as I walk by the tank. I'm still part of the bucket crew, so I actually have a 10-gallon brute can to mix up some salt water, and then 2 5-gallon buckets. I use a CJ 1.5 to drain the tank, and then refill it. You can hear the noise, and see that the overflow box is low. It's because I started the valve wide open. Oh, by the way, the poor lighting, but that's the finished product. And so far, so good. Just gonna have to make some minor tweaks to get this silent and the water level where I want it. I still have some of the water that I took out of the tank here because I may need some extra water as I get this adjusted. So that's where we're at, the noise level, but I'm gonna get that fine-tuned. Before we look at the plumbing redo, look at this. After the water change, this guy, you know, I'm definitely a newbie I don't know if that's good or bad, but that thing is sliming pretty good, or I don't know. Correct me on this because I have no idea. This one, not so much. But let's take a look at the plumbing. And you can see here, I need to adjust the valve a little bit, but it's always been a slow trickle going down that emergency drain, which the emergency drain is here. And for sake of any questions that might come up, that is an optical sensor plugged into the Neptune AFS. So if that is ever triggered, that means that both drains are clogged and the return pump will shut off. So taking a look downstairs here, so far so good. Very, very easy swap. So to break this down real quick, probably the RedSea adapter with shipping is probably like $25. This piece is a couple bucks. PVC, I don't know, 10 bucks or so. I think that this 1-inch valve, Spears gate valve, is $34. And again, you can do this with 3/4 inch plumbing. There's nothing wrong with that. I just had 1 inch and didn't want to buy another 8-foot section or whatever it is of 3/4 inch because I had no other use for it. So, but look at this guy. Looks crazy. So, right after the water change, which I do still have a bucket of some water here, just in case I need some salt water. Back up and look at the tank here. That's going to wrap it up, folks. Again, if you want full details on how to do the drain, go to SithRico's channel. He's got a full video on just that main drain itself. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this off here. As always, I do appreciate you following along on this journey. Check out the website, pelfrey.net. Check me out on Instagram @pelfreysreef. And I'll catch you on the next one.